Hard to believe the Steam Deck's been out for almost a year now, huh? Today, I want to talk about the Steam Deck as it was a year ago, and what the Steam Deck is today. And I want to talk about what makes the Steam Deck so special, even among gaming hardware today. So let's get started. My thoughts on the Steam Deck's ergonomics are that they're the same as they were before. I've actually heard they've improved both the Steam button and the quick access menu button. Both of these buttons are the worst feeling buttons on a modern controller to this day. But it's not as if these are main buttons that you use to play games. They're more ancillary functions. Yes, the Steam Deck is a bit heavier than most other handhelds on the market, including other PC handhelds. But this is aided by the fact that the Steam Deck isn't all that dense, all things considered. It's by no means a heavy feeling device. The device feels great in my hands. That said, I do think the D-pad and face buttons could stand to have some improvements. Both of these could stand to be clickier. Make it like a Vita's D-pad and face buttons. Those are some nice feeling buttons, by the way. I also firmly believe Valve could make the screen better in future iterations. The screen very much works, and you know what? It's fine. I'm okay with it. You're not gonna notice in the heat of battle. But I do think better color reproduction, better color accuracy, would make the screen even better. But the most radical changes to the Steam Deck are in its software. Valve has issued many updates. Some are bug fixes and hotfixes and whatnot, but many of these updates include new killer features. Many features that people just overlook today. One of these features has to do with the quick access menu. Even from day one, your Steam Deck has always been able to tweak power settings. TDP, GPU clock speeds, all of that stuff. And it's very appreciated. But guess what? This button right here, this Use Per Game Profile button, used to not exist. This was added in an update fairly early on. That's right, back in the dark ages, you had to manually switch to TDP and GPU clock speeds every single time you swapped to a different game. Thank God Valve added this feature, otherwise I wouldn't have bothered with power settings at all. Like fuck man, I even made a video complaining about this very early on in the Steam Deck's lifespan. There's also one other major feature Valve added to the Steam Deck, the ability to change your screen's refresh rate manually. At first, the Fox made a video about it, albeit on Windows only. The Fox is a great guy, but even I didn't believe it because how could I? This feature challenged every fundamental understanding I had of frame rates. But my god, playing games at 40 Hz, it fundamentally changed how I understand refresh rates and frame rates forever. Do keep in mind that not all games function well in 40 Hz. There are plenty of games that tie physics to frame rate, like fighting games. So stick with 60 Hz in those cases. 40 FPS on a 40 Hz display feels significantly better than playing at 30 FPS on a 60 Hz display. Better input latency than 30 FPS, and visually it looks a lot smoother as well. Yeah, sure, it's no 60 FPS on a 60 Hz display, but for games that can't really reach 60 FPS, like modern AAA titles, this is a godsend. They've also issued updates to improve the docking experience overall, as docking the Steam Deck really wasn't that great of an experience back then. But now it's almost seamless. You've even got multiple different options to change resolution, scaling, and all of that cool stuff. And yes, some indie games do run at 60 FPS on a 4K display. Speaking of games, I think we've neglected talking about games as a whole. Now, more than ever, more and more games are becoming Steam Deck verified or playable. And yes, while some of these games have always worked even without Valve's own testing, the fact of the matter is, Valve is actively working to make games more compatible with the Steam Deck, and by extension Linux. Even just a year ago, it was inconceivable to play games like Apex Legends on Linux, because the anti-cheat didn't support Linux. Now it does. And it's all thanks to Valve's diligence in working with their partners. Yeah, sure, there's still plenty of games that cannot be played on Steam Deck due to one issue or another, but as long as it's not an issue with anti-cheat, Valve can always update Proton and make the games more compatible with Steam Deck, and by extension, Linux Desktop as well. Valve's crack team of engineers strikes again. But it's not just Valve. More and more developers are actively trying to get their games on the Steam Deck. More and more developers are actively committing to having their games be Steam Deck verified, even before release, which is extremely commendable, whether it's a major AAA firm or the lowly indie dev. Speaking of which, some games are retroactively getting patches to work better on the Steam Deck. For example, Cyberpunk 2077 has a Steam Deck preset for graphics. It runs better on Deck than it does on PS4. Also, there's been plenty of modern AAA titles that release with issues on Steam Deck, but Valve can also push out updates to fix those via Proton updates. Sometimes these Proton updates include specific fixes for specific games, such as Elden Ring. Valve tends to do this with multiple different individual titles, especially if they're high profile, such as Dead Space. These types of fixes are practically unheard of in the PC space, and yes, while companies like Nvidia can push out driver updates don't single-handedly fix games like Elden Ring, which Valve single-handedly fixed for Linux users and Steam Deck players. But Valve isn't the only Steam Deck hero. The Steam Deck community is very passionate. There's multiple tips, tricks, tutorials, utilities, etc., etc., expanding the Steam Deck beyond what Valve can or will do. So before we get started, we do have to mention that Valve does put in a lot of legwork making games work on Steam Deck. Like Apex Legends would not be playable on Steam Deck or Linux PC if not for Valve. And without the Steam Deck, there'd be no Steam Deck community. So let's get started. Even with Valve's work on Proton, some games don't work as expected. That's why Proton GE exists. Proton GE is a modified version of Proton that it's more on the bleeding edge side of things. It also includes fixes and codecs that Valve either will not or legally cannot include, such as fixes for specific Windows-only codecs. Some games that don't work under Proton will work in Proton GE, such as Gears of War 5. No, I'm not calling it Gears 5. That's fucking stupid. Anyways, Gears of War 5 works on Steam Deck. That is, if you use Proton GE. Proton GE doesn't fix any issues with games anti-cheats, so you still cannot play Gears of War 5 online. But Proton GE includes a workaround for this game that lets you play this game offline, with either single player or bot matches. Installing Proton GE by itself isn't so simple, but there is a utility that makes it a lot easier to install. Proton UpQT. It's the recommended tool to get if you're trying to install Proton GE, and every online tutorial just tells you to install this from the Discover App Store. You can install whatever version of Proton GE you want, even if it's an older version, though typically you should download the latest version. Proton UpQT also has the ability to download other compatibility tools, like Lux Torpedo. Now let's talk about launchers. Steam isn't the only PC launcher in town anymore, but it's the only major storefront with a Linux client. Unfortunately, this means some of the other storefronts aren't so easy to access on Linux. Thankfully, we have tools like Lutris or Bottles that help facilitate downloading and installing games from these launchers. Nice. But probably the coolest third-party launcher is something called the Hero Games Launcher. It's a dedicated third-party Epic and GOG launcher. It allows you to access your GOG library, as well as all of those free Epic games that you've claimed. Hopefully you didn't spend a penny on the Epic Game Store, right? So playing all of your PC games is cool. But how about non-PC games? What about emulation? Emulation has always been a great experience on day one. However, the act of actually setting up the emulators, setting up the BIOSes, setting up all of your folders and all of that stuff, even adding individual ROMs as their own games in the Steam library wasn't always so easy. That is, before EmuDeck. EmuDeck is a great utility. I'm not sponsored by EmuDeck or anything, but I am saying that EmuDeck is the best place to get started when it comes to Steam Deck emulation. It's so good, and it's so easy. It's so easy that I don't even have to make a video about how to install emulators anymore. Anyways, as a testament to the Steam Deck's power, the Steam Deck can emulate PS3 and Switch games fairly decently. But on the community side of things, it's not just about getting more games to run on Steam Deck. It's also about customization as well as enhancing the Steam Deck's functionality. This is Decky, a plugin framework. These plugins exist for one purpose: to add new features to the Steam Deck's game mode. For example, one of my favorite plugins is the CSS loader. It allows you to apply themes to the Steam Deck's UI, allowing you to customize how the UI looks, within reason of course. There's also one called MTP Loader, which allows you to plug your Steam Deck into your computer, like an Android phone. There's Audio Loader, which lets you change the UI sound effects. You even have the option to add background music to the UI. Many of these audio packs are simply ports from other consoles, like having PS4 menu sounds or PS Vita menu sounds, and the menu music as well. But you could also just make your own custom sound pack and have your own custom menu sounds. But it's not just about utilities and things you can download. It's also about information. Websites like Proton DB has great information on how to get games working on Linux and Steam Deck, and there's also major community hubs like Steam Deck HQ, with game reviews focused on the Steam Deck side of things. And you'll also have a glut of content creators that love the Steam Deck and focus on the Steam Deck, like yours truly, and also others like Fan the Deck. Even if Valve were to stop developing the Steam Deck today, the community can take the torch from Valve and continue to make the Steam Deck experience a lot better. And of course, what video is complete without accessories? There are a ton of Steam Deck accessories that exist now. such as this official Valve Steam Deck dock. This wasn't available during release, but it's available now. There's also a litany of other accessories as well, such as Dbrand's kill switch. There's also extra functional docks, such as this JSOX one. There's cool Steam Deck carrying cases, like this TomTalk case right here. A wide variety of controllers work on Steam Deck. You can use most modern controllers on the Steam Deck with no issues. That's right, you can even use Switch Pro controllers as well. You can also use fight sticks. You can use experimental non-standard controllers. And you can even use this DJ-style turntable controller. I'm not saying accessories are the lifeblood of the Steam Deck, but I am saying some accessories can enhance your Steam Deck experience, and in some cases give you brand new experiences. And thanks to the community, you can print your own Steam Deck accessories. I don't have a 3D printer though, so I can't really do that. With all of these improvements to the software, as well as community-made tools and community-made guides, there's no better time to be a Steam Deck gamer than the present. It's not to say that Valve isn't worthy of some credit. If Valve wasn't around, there'd be no Steam Deck. And the fact that Valve released bespoke gaming hardware and allows the community to do basically whatever they want with it, it allows the community to flourish in ways that a typical console community could not. Very reminiscent of the PC master race, which is somewhat appropriate given that the Steam Deck is a PC. And it's not as if Valve isn't paying attention to what the community has to say, and what the community does with its device. A lot of the big updates, like the 40Hz update, as well as the per application performance settings, they were all features requested by the community. And I would know, I brought it up early on, and the thread got a lot of traction. Innovations like allowing the users to set their own custom boot animations would have been unheard of on other devices, but Valve saw plenty of people do it, and made it easier for you to apply your own custom boot animations. There are other things people have complained about and Valve has fixed, but there have been so many updates and fixes that I can't even remember off the top of my head what they were. The Steam Deck is still by no means a perfect device, but it's improved vastly since it first released. Valve does listen to the community. I do have a laundry list of things that I wish would improve, but that's probably best saved for a different video. If you like high-tech lowlife, you should check out the rest of my channel. And if you like the rest of my channel, you should like, subscribe, and spread the good gospel of high-tech lowlife. Furthermore, we have a community Discord server. There's a link in the description down below. Check us out.